Africa Food for Thought is a non-profit organization that aims to provide nutrition to school children in order to promote concentration and learning. At present, AFFT is only operational in the western area of Gauteng. To find out more, I have with us now Craig Rosewarne in studio. He's a volunteer in the Orphaned and Vulnerable Children program. Craig, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, thank you.
Give us background into AFFT.
AFFT was started in 2006 by two very passionate people, and the story actually goes where they went out to try go and make a difference on their own, to really go out and feed children, and they actually ended up giving boiled eggs to kids, and they noticed that the children were often eating one of the eggs and putting the others into their pockets to take home for, maybe to eat later or to give to their families. And that really stirred and pushed them to put in place a formal organisation to actually make a far bigger difference. So AFFT is really there to feed children, to make a difference in South Africa.
Now, how many children do you have in the program at the moment?
There's three different programs that AFFT focuses on. One is the school feeding program, which has now grown to over 11,000 children. So they don't only feed them, but they complement the government's feeding program by taking them fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, and other food items as well. There's also 7 creches that are supported. And the program that I'm involved in is the schools actually are a feeder program for the orphan and vulnerable children, the OVCs. And they identify children coming to school with issues, hungry, abuse situations, and that's where AFFT gets involved and goes and interviews those families, and they get put onto the OVC program, and then we provide support to them on a monthly basis.
Now, Craig, naturally all these programs, they need some form of funding and some form of support. How do you raise the funds for the programs?
There's a number of quite large organizations that, as part of their corporate social responsibility program, help to support AFFT.
And in terms of your partnership with government, how is that collaboration?
Well, government really gets involved from a social worker point of view, so where, as I mentioned earlier, where families are identified as having needs, and there are some really heart-rendering situations out there that we do come across, to get the social workers involved to go and assist those families from a counselling point of view.
Now in July, we of course celebrate the birthday of the big man, Utatu Mandela, and what was your organisation doing for 67 minutes?
So AFFT got involved with 2 schools for that particular day, and a lot of the children don't get the nice treats that many of our children out there do get, and through a bit of sponsorship, additional sponsorship, we managed to take in 2,000 food parcels with a few extra treats for the kids to really brighten up their day. It was actually interesting to see. One thing we never really thought about was how much food we're actually giving these kids. So a lot of the smaller children were really battling to carry these big food parcels, but there was no complaints.
That's fantastic. Now, what other programs do you have in place in as far as community development, except for the food parcels?
Where we're moving the organisation now is to, apart from taking care of the basic needs of feeding families, is to that next level, up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that's to really, once you start feeding and that security is provided, is to then look at how we can actually develop their school marks and move them into a position where the older children can start getting bursaries to study and ultimately jobs. And we've got a few nice case studies now of some of the older kids, especially one in my family now that's actually managed to get a bursary for a marketing diploma, and he's now working in a call centre environment. So we're almost able to close that loop, and that person now is that man of the home is now able to take care of his own family. The 4 families that I'm involved in personally, there's no fathers on the scene, so the children are often left without that encouragement and that motivation. So, we perform apart from feeding and taking care of the basic needs, I'm also there to look at their school marks on a quarterly basis and encourage, and where often sometimes I have to get involved and be a bit strict and maybe discipline, but it's very rewarding to see how they've grown. My families have grown from the basics to now being actually blossoming, kids smiling, doing well at school, and, as I said, ultimately getting jobs as well.
So you're one of the volunteers. How is it actually broken down? Each volunteer gets to look after a particular group of families, and is that how it works? And how many volunteers are participating at the moment? Volunteers
go out in teams of 2. So there's a team leader, and then there's a volunteer that goes out with that person. And this is the area that we have a shortage in. Funding is always a challenge, but we are able to raise funds. The challenge is finding labourers to actually go out there and do what we do on a monthly basis, because it requires a fairly long-term commitment to see it through.
Now, in terms of the events that you personally have been involved in, what were some of your highlights?
We have a number of events during the year. The one that we had recently was an Easter egg drive. So over 30,000 Easter eggs were sponsored, and each Easter egg had a message of hope. Many of them actually personalised, handwritten by kids to give out to the kids. End of the year, we have a Christmas party, and all the orphan and vulnerable families, the kids come through to that. We have it at the Botanical Gardens and other locations, and the kids are given lovely food and jumping castles, entertainment, and Santa arrives on a motorbike and gives them a whole lot of presents as well. So it's always great to see.
Very exciting. Thanks so much, Craig, for joining us this morning.
Thank
we really appreciate it. And if you would like to volunteer, as Craig was saying, that's what they need more of. You can visit us on our website, www.growingtomorrow.co.za, or call our hotline 011 791 5658. We'll give you the details so that you can also lend a hand to this program.